Time to talk to one of those independent candidates, Allegra Spender. To take us there, here was the Prime Minister warning voters against the independents.
My warning is very clear to those seats where people are thinking about independence. I would say this: if they won't tell you how they would vote, how could you vote for them? Not just on who they'd support in government, but we can't have a government that's a weather vane. I mean, could you imagine? We already have seen the weakness in the leadership of the Labor Party. Could you imagine each and every day having to go to that chorus of independents, the Greens and everyone else?
Allegra Spender, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now let's deal with this off the top. I know you faced a lot of questions about this, but you've refused to say who you'd back in a hung parliament. Do you accept, though, this election for a lot of voters is not just about their local candidate, but about who's going to run the country, who is going to be Prime Minister? Do you think, at least for some voters, this is an important question?
Look, I think if you just look at that tape of Wentworth voters, they talked about the issues that they face in majority. They talked about what they want to see from government. They talked about policy more than they talked about party. And that's what I'm standing on. But so for me, this is about what can I do to give a moderate, sensible, centrist government that is looking for the long term of Australia. Because if we govern for the long term and if we have that approach, then we will be better off. So what I've said to people in Wentworth is that I will negotiate with either side if it comes to forming government, but on an issue I will vote based on the interests of Wentworth. I will consult very widely with the community as well as with experts. And so I think that's absolutely crucial. It's about bringing the people and experts back into politics.
So can you tell us at least how you would approach the decision if there is a hung parliament on who to back? Are you looking at whose policies most closely align with yours, or will you actually be demanding that they change their policies to match what you've taken to the election?
Look, I think we'll see what happens to the parliament. I mean, Wentworth is one seat out of 151, so it will depend a lot on the numbers actually in the parliament, and it will absolutely depend on the policies that they're willing to negotiate at the time. And I'm willing to negotiate with either side of government or either side of the parties in terms of forming government. What
is your position? Let's talk about climate change. How flexible are you willing to be in your position?
Look, I think that climate change is one of the most important factors in terms of what is right for the environment, but is also a huge economic opportunity for Australia. And you look at what the Business Council of Australia is saying. They're saying that we should take 46 to 50% reduction by 2030, because that is in the interest of Australian businesses. It's actually in the interest of Australian families and Australian jobs. You look at the scientists who are saying that for the world to have a good chance of keeping to 1.5 to 2 degrees, we need to cut emissions by 50% by 2030. So those are some of the things that's really crucial, because climate change is an issue that affects the economy, it affects defence, it affects the environment. And so that will absolutely be a crucial issue that I consider. Yeah. And I'm hoping that both sides are willing to do something about this, because you look at the New South Wales coalition. They have a target in for 2030, which is 50%. You look at the Conservative Party in the UK; they have very ambitious climate targets. So I'm hopeful that either side of party can really come back to the science and actually come back to business.
Because there's a little bit of difference with some of the other independent Teal candidates. They're saying 60% by 2030. You're staying with 50%, right?
Look, I'm saying at least 50%. I think we can go further. But I've really worked on what business is willing. We're saying that is the opportunity for Australia, and also what the scientists say we need to do.
On some other issues, you've said the tax system is broken, and you've called for tax reform. So which part's broken, and what sort of reform would you like?
Look, I think there's been quite a lot of discussion on this program about productivity, and I agree this is a missing conversation from most of this election, and taxation is a really important part of that. Migration is an important part. Innovation is also an important part of that. I think we should have a tax review, and you look at areas such as stamp duty, that is a drag on the economy. It is a state tax, but the federal government has an opportunity to be a leader here. You look at payroll tax. You look at the business tax rates in this country. The average in the OECD is 21.5. Australia is 25 and 30%.
So how do you lower all of those? Do you support increasing the GST, as is often discussed in this conversation?
Look, I think you need to. Why I'm calling for a tax review is I think you need to get business, you need to get the unions, you need to get the community around the table and have a discussion about what is the tax system for the future.
What do you think? You're identifying taxes that should be lowered, but would increasing the GST be a good idea?
I think that we should consider, I said, with those parties, what are the issues that should be on the table? I think GST should be on the table in a conversation about tax. It's a major part of our tax system. But I think the point is that this isn't about me designing the tax system. This is about me saying, the economists, the business community acknowledges that tax is an issue for productivity, and we're not talking about it, and we do need to talk about it.
And you touched on migration there. You do want more foreign workers brought in?
Yeah, look, I think that Australia has, we normally have a lot of, as I said, foreign workers in Australia. You look at, we've had a big dip in terms of both our permanent and our temporary migration in the last 2.5 years. And every single business I talk to, whether it be the local cafe or whether it be, emerging tech firm, is talking to me about skills gaps. And I think, we talked about inflationary pressures as well. And so I support that we up permanent migration to 220,000 for the next 2 years. That's in line, again, with the Business Council of Australia to help some of those short-term pain, as well as consider how else we can get more of our temporary workers who support Australian jobs and who support the Australian economy in the short term, because we've had our borders closed, let's be honest, for the last 2 years.
You've said on national security that Australia should engage constructively with China without ever compromising our national interest. How should we do that?
Look, I think, my position on China is that obviously China has changed in terms of its strategy, and I share the concerns, I think, of, the man from Wentworth and actually the community about what has just happened in the Solomon Islands. And I think that we should be really focused on, we should absolutely focus on our defence, but we should also be considering what are our foreign policy tools in relation to aid, in relation to soft power, in relation to engaging with our community in the Pacific to do this. And if I'm elected, I will be listening to the defence experts in the government. I'll be listening, getting briefings on national security, because these are serious issues.
Do you support increasing defence spending?
Look, I support where the government is currently going in terms of defence spending. And again, what I would say...
And the nuclear subs, the nuclear submarines?
Yeah, I support the nuclear submarines. And that said, I also know that that's what I'll be doing, is relying on all these questions that may emerge through the Parliament. I'll be relying on those briefings from experts, across the defence community, to make sure that I'm being a constructive, critical voice for whoever's in power, because we need unity of purpose in those areas.
You've called for an anti-corruption commission with teeth. Has there been anything in this term of Parliament you think might amount to corruption?
Look, I think I sort of listen to what the community cares about, right? And the community feels that money is being spent in ways that is not for the interest of Wentworth, and not actually so the interest of Wentworth, because it's not actually about the money that Wentworth got. It's a money that has been spent across the community. So you've got the car park rorts, the sports rorts. You even seen in the most recent budget, we've had, I think, $16 billion worth of infrastructure. $10 billion worth of that is not in the priority of infrastructure spending. And so, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a kid. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. And I'm actually not going to sort of preempt a commission if one gets up.
But is this the sort of thing you think it should look at?
I think those things should be considered, but again, under what is seen as under the definition of the corruption as defined in the Parliament. As again, I can't comment because I don't have all the facts, and nor am I the person who'll make those decisions. But I'm talking about the community expects that money that is spent in our money is spent in a way that is best for the community, and that's what they're seeking, not to retain marginal seats.
One grant, $500,000 went to the Redleaf Beach outdoor swimming area in Wentworth. Does that deserve scrutiny?
I think we're looking at corruption that is, large scale and significant, and I'm not going to comment on those.
Not going to criticise a bit of money for Wentworth.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not. I'm not going to. I'm not here. I'm actually saying this is not for me to say what is corruption. We need an independent corruption authority to identify what is corruption and do that in a very responsible way. So I don't think it's appropriate for me to say this is corruption or this isn't corruption. I'm saying this is the community concern.
Let's finish where we began and what happens in the event that no one can form a majority. Zali Steggall has said she'd be more likely to support the coalition if Scott Morrison was not the leader. Do you hold a similar view?
Look, for me, I'm policy, not party, and not personalities. I've had no dealings with Scott Morrison or Anthony Albanese. But for me, it's really about what policies we can put forward, and in terms of again, what is the numbers composition of the government of the time.
So you don't have a problem with Scott Morrison?
It's not about him personally. I think what this is about what are the policies and what are the ethos of where we're going for the future. And for the policies, and I said again, come back to the numbers in the Parliament.
And so you might back him in to continue as Prime Minister?
Yeah, if that depends, as I said, I'm open to that, and I'm open to negotiating with everyone.
Okay. Allegra Spender, appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thanks so much.